يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ذل فغرق وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وعروة الوثقى قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقان الحميد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون آمنا بالله وصدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala twice in the Qur'an, once in Surah Nahl and the second time in Surah Al-Anbiya, tells us, ask those who know if you do not know. And there are various things that are there within this short statement that we have discussed in our discussions on the fundamental doctrine of Islam, which is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Our discussions have been on the basic foundation that there is no God but Allah, and that the call of Rasulullah where he says, Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu. Say la ilaha illallah and you will be successful. Within these discussions, we have reached a stage where we are discussing the ita'at of Allah, the obedience to Allah, in which the basic foundation is that we not only obey Allah, but we also obey all those whom He has commanded to be obeyed, and do not obey all those whom He has commanded not to be obeyed. And as far as the term Ahlul-dhikr is concerned, and asking those who know, there are three basic levels here that are discussed by the Mufassirin. The first is that this statement is an answer to those people of the book who had not accepted Rasulullah's risalat. The second level is that we need to be firm in asking and being with the Ahlul Dhikr, and the Ahlul Dhikr is the Ahlul-bayt alayhimus salam. And finally, the universal principle that if we don't know something, we ask those who know about that subject, that matter. Last week we are in the process of discussing Ghaybate Sughra, and the ulamas, the people who knew at that time, who were direct representatives of the Imam of our time, Imam Al-Hujja Al-Qaim Ali Muhammad Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Faraj Al-Sharif. And we discussed two NAIBs, the two direct representatives, that is Uthman bin Sa'id Al-Amiri and As-Samman and his son Muhammad, who were the first two representatives respectively of the Imam during the Ghaybate Sughra. And that Ghaybate Sughra was an absolute necessity for it to be a transit place, where a time where people would go from one method of following the Ahlul-bayt Ma'asum Imam to those who are muttaqi in the ulama. Today we want to go one step further and discuss the life of the third Naib, which is Abul Qasim Hussein ibn Ruh. He is very well known amongst us because we write and address our arida to him on 15th Shaban and in any time, as we have discussed before. We discussed last time how he took up the position from the second Naib, and today we want to go further. He was in this position of the direct representative of the Imam from 305 Hijri until 326 Hijri, which is a period of almost 22 years. Abul Qasim was a very pious, very highly knowledgeable, and an extensively intelligent personality. His quality of debating, the quality of debating was such that it was honored even by the opponents with whom he debated. He spent his entire life in taqiyya. Times were not very good for the Shias of the Ahlul-bayt or the followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Just as a glimpse of his taqiyya. Once one of his servants cursed Muawiyah ibn Abu Sufyan, and Abul Qasim immediately terminated his service. And he did not reinstall him despite so many requests that came from people. This was his taqiyya and level of taqiyya. Now, there was a time when he has debated about Imam Husayn alayhi salam, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. As we said last time, there was a movement at that time in which the people began saying that it wasn't Imam Husayn alayhi salam himself that was killed in Karbala, but there was somebody who resembled Imam Husayn and that was killed. There was this movement to trivialize the event of Karbala at that time. So one of the people amongst them at that time came to Abul Qasim and said, I need to pose some questions to you. And Abul Qasim said, yes, and today we will discuss that particular debate and how he has debated and laid out so many principles in answering this question. He said, you may ask. So the opponent says, please tell me if Hussein is the wali of Allah, that is, he is a saint, a beloved of Allah. And Abul Qasim said, yes. So he says, is it possible? The opponent is now asking a question, and we must take note of this, that these sort of questions come even during these times. That is it possible for Allah to give power to his enemy over his friend? This is the question that is come at a time when people are speaking about the event of Karbala, that it may be something that the Shias have made it go out of proportion. And this was in direct reference to the physical defeat, as we may say, of the massacre of Abu Abdullah and his companions at Karbala. So Abul Qasim answers him in a very lengthy manner, but in a very principled manner also. He says, pay attention to what I am saying and remember it. Abul Qasim says, you should know that Allah the Almighty does not speak to the people directly, but He sends some prophets of His to them. If He had sent non-humans, Abul Qasim says, they would not have gathered around Him and they would have shunned Him. That's why the prophets were from human. They were people like us. They used to eat like humans, and they used to walk in the streets and bazaars like any other ordinary person. People used to say to the prophets, you are just like us. We do not accept that you are a prophet. What is the distinction between us and you? Like people say it even today, when the king and the Sayyid of all Anbiya and Mursaleen is being accused, that what is the difference between us and him? We do not accept you, people say to the prophets, that you are a prophet, but that you present some miracle to us. Prove that you are a prophet of Allah. If you show us a miracle, we would know that you have a special distinction from Allah, which we do not have. Therefore, the miracles of the prophets, Abul Qasim emphasizes here that the miracles of the prophets are the greatest proof of the veracity of their claims. The truthfulness, the trustworthiness of the prophets is actually said by these miracles that they showed to the people of their time. And therefore, Abul Qasim says, some of them, after warnings and completion of proof, presented the miracle of the flood and storm, and the arrogant were drowned, referring to Nabi Nuh alayhi salam, which is known as Noah in the Bible. Nabi Nuh preached for 950 years to his people. And such was his opposition to him, that people used to stone him all day long, such that he would be in the middle of all stones around him. And yet Jibreel would come, remove the stones in the evening, and the next day Nabi Nuh would go out again and preach. People saw this miracle of his, yet they did not accept until the flood came and the arrogant who opposed him were all drowned. Then Abul Qasim says, some were such that when they were thrown into the fire, it became cool and comfort for them, referring to Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham as we know it in the Bible, that when he was thrown by Namrud into the fire, Allah revealed to the fire and said, Ya naru kuni bardam wa salam ala Ibrahim. O fire, become cool and comfort for Ibrahim alayhi salam. And in a moment we will discuss that part also. It says, for some the sea split and the enemies drowned in it, referring to Nabi Musa alayhi salam, who split the waters for the Banu Israel to cross to safety, and the Fir'aun and his hosts to be drowned. The Almighty Allah turned the dry staff into a python, referring to the staff of Nabi Musa alayhi salam, and of them were such, though through whose hands the Almighty enlivened the dead, referring to Nabi Isa, the Jesus that is known in the Bible. That Nabi Isa alayhi salam, we know, with his bare hands used to heal the lepers, used to heal people of their sicknesses. Even the dead were made alive by just passing his hand. Even then, Qur'an also tells us that he created a bird out of clay and said, fly, become alive by the power of Allah, and it flew. Then he refers to the principles of miracles, but before that he speaks about Rasulullah Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his miracles. Abul Qasim says, and for some he split the moon, and in the same way gave speech to animals like the camel and the wolf. We all know that Rasulullah, by just a sign, split the moon into two halves, and then it came back together. He even moved the tree, split the tree and put it back together without any effort. He made the camel give shahada. The wolf came and gave shahada also. And these are the miracles of Rasulullah. In other words, he says the divine prophets presented such miracles that people were not capable of performing them. None could have done it. None can do it. The wisdom of Allah was such that these prophets who performed such great miracles, though they possessed the miracles, sometimes they achieved victories and sometimes they suffered defeat. Defeat here is apparent and only what is physically known. And when we look at these miracles, for example, an alim has explained this beautifully, that when Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire by Namrud, Allah revealed to the fire and said, be cool and comfort for Ibrahim. However, when Fir'aun tested Nabi Musa alayhi salam, the Moses, with fire and with jewels to test. Even the enemy of the prophets knew the powers of the prophets, that they were intelligent even at childhood. They knew it, and that is why Fir'aun made that test when Nabi Musa was just a young child. And what happened is that Fir'aun put jewels, glittering jewels on one side and red hot fire, charcoal on the other, knowing very well that a normal child would go towards the fire. But if this child is the prophesied prophet again, who is going to overthrow me, then he would not go towards fire and he would go towards safety, which is the jewels. So when he put this in, Allah sent Jibreel and diverted Nabi Musa from the jewels of safety to the fire, with which, like any normal child, he picked up that piece of burning red hot charcoal and put it in his mouth like any child would do. The result was he burnt his palm, and so did he burn his tongue. The tongue was burnt to such an extent that it gave him that issue of speech for the rest of his life. The question that comes is, if Allah could reveal for the fire of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam to cool and become comfort for Ibrahim, could he not have done the same for Nabi Musa and let it be cool and comfort for Nabi Musa? The answer is very simple. If we think about and reflect on this, is that Allah wanted to protect His mission. He wanted to protect His mission as well as His prophet, the messenger who came with the message. Had He not made the fire of Ibrahim cool and comfort, Ibrahim would have perished with the message. Therefore, He had to make it cool and comfort so that Ibrahim would come out alive. On the other hand, if the fire would not have burnt Musa like a normal child, Fir'aun would have killed Musa, and therefore the message that Musa came with and the messenger would have both perished. So Allah protected Ibrahim by making the fire cool and comfort for him, whilst for Musa to protect him, he had to make him burn with his with the charcoal. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So having this in mind, Abul Qasim says, if they had always been victorious and had never suffered defeat and calamities, the physical and the apparent calamities that we see, people would have mistaken them for being God and considered them all powerful. That is another reason why Allah sometimes even made His very close friends, beloved, go through so much pain, so that people do not take them for God, that they are all powerful and that they can remove any calamity from them. Thus the prophets, despite their miracles, were sometimes victorious and successful and sometimes vanquished. When we see the battles of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, we see that he was single-handedly having to protect Islam and Rasulullah and the message of Rasulullah single-handedly, and was victorious in all the battles. But when we look at the battle of Karbala, the only way to protect that message of Allah and the messenger at that time was to give that calamity that happened in Karbala. So he says sometimes they were victorious and successful, and sometimes they were vanquished, which was just apparent and physical. Therefore, the people did not perceive them to be omnipotent, someone who is beyond power, and always realized that there was a power above them. The prophets, who is the creator and the nourisher of the universe. At this stage, Abul Qasim now explains the purpose of miracles. And he says they, the people, were compelled to confess to him and obey his prophets, who are proofs of Allah over the people. These prophets are only a proof over the people. Anyone who saw their propagation, their warnings, as well as the signs, decided and confessed that it was truth and worth the obedience. A very good example is the courtyard of Pharaoh. When we see that Nabi Musa was told to throw his rod, and when the magicians who were gathered, the best magicians of Egypt were gathered at that time, and they threw their falsehoods and lies on the floor, the strings and the sticks that looked like apparent snakes, the rod of Nabi Musa swallowed them all. When the magicians saw this, they realized that this was not magic, but this was a reality, a power that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Musa, and therefore immediately they fell down prostrating, saying, "We believe in the Lord of Musa and Harun." In this way, Abul Qasim says, they secured their salvation. These magicians secured their salvation. And those who deviated from this and became inimical to the divine messengers fell into everlasting chastisement. Those who were still inimical, having seen miracles, they were destroyed for good. When we see Husayn ibn Ruh and his capabilities, we see that he shows us a very powerful answer why Hussein alayhi salam was killed in Karbala and how the mission was successful at that time. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When Abul Qasim was answering this, there was a lot of people around who looked at it, and they all fell in bewilderment that where did Abul Qasim get all these answers from? And thereafter, Muhammad ibn Ibrahim ibn Ishaq, who was a prominent scholar of that time, who was present in the gathering, went to Abul Qasim the next day. And he asked, that is Ibn Ibrahim asks Abul Qasim, was this answer that you gave yesterday, which was so astonishing and something that was so straightforward yet so convincing, was this a reply that came from you, or was it the reply that the Imam of the time, Imam Al-Hujjah Jalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, gave it to you? And Abul Qasim responds, "O Muhammad ibn Ibrahim, I never say anything on my own, even in the most difficult circumstances. Know that rather the source of all the things is from the favors I have received from Hujjatullah, Baqiyatullah, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif." Allahumma salli. When we look at another time, we see that Abul Qasim was one who conveyed messages from people to the Imam of the time. And the great Allama Ali ibn al-Husayn al-Kummi, who is very highly recognized and prominent in the Shia world, who was at that time, wrote a letter to Husayn ibn Ruh and requested that he ask the Imam that he be given and granted a son from his wife, who was also his cousin, that a son be granted to him by Allah so that he may become a scholar and continue his legacy. When Husayn ibn Ruh conveyed this message, the Imam's reply was that you should convey to him that there is going to be no children from this wife. But soon you will have another wife that is from Dailam, which is from the southern coast of Caspian Sea in Iran. And from her will be born 2 sons, and they will be deeply knowledgeable about religion and religious law. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala soon made this happen, and this Dailami lady was married, came to the Lama there, and 3 sons were born: Muhammad, Husayn, and Hassan. Muhammad and Husayn were very well-known, prominent Shia ulama of those times, and became very prominent scholars, and such was their memory that people were even astonished how they could remember so much from the Qur'an, and they always used to say this is because of the dua of the Imam. Whilst Hassan was a very nice man, and he was always in ibadah away from people. The honor of Abul Qasim is such that even today, 11 centuries thereafter, after his death, even today, we address our issues to the Imam through him. And it is important that we understand that when we write the Arida, what do we write? We address it to Hussein ibn Ru, and we say, "Oh Hussein ibn Ru, Salamun alaykum, I bear witness." When we write that Arida, we say, "I bear witness that you died in the path of Allah, and hence you are alive and are sustained by Allah. I am addressing you in your life which you lead with Allah. This is my hope and my wishes to the master of the era, the 12th Imam. So please hand it over to him, for you are indeed trustworthy." What we are telling Hussein ibn Ru is, please deliver this message, become my messenger, and you are trustworthy. Therefore, we have that confidence that whatever we write in that Arida reaches the Imam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to be able to recognize these scholars and follow the real scholars that are there, and make our life according to the wishes of the Imam of our time. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Qul huwallahu ahad Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitan rajim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah alladhi la ilaha illa huwa al-halimul kareem, ghafiru dhanbi wa qabilu at-tawb wa huwa al-ghafuru rahim. Subhana man sabakat rahmatuhu ghadaba wa basata al-yadaini bir-rahma. Subhana man lam yukallif nafsan illa duna wasiha wa afa anis sayyiati wa lam yujazi biha. سبحان من لا يزداد ولا معاصي لعباد الله كرما وجودا ولا كثرة الذنوب إلا فهو صفحا. نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف على العباد بجودي والأواد على المذنبين بحلمي. ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبا. سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين. صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعم ومعدن الرحمة. Mu'minin, the intention was that we begin a discussion on reflections from Surah Jum'ah. However, time is not permitting us today, so inshallah after 2 weeks we shall start this series also. In the meantime, today amongst us in our gathering, we have so many guests, so we welcome them all, and we have special welcome for 2 very important guests that are with us today. We have the Reverend Scott DeVires from the Presbyterian Church, Maitland. Welcome to our center. And we also have Reverend Dr. Turge from Istanbul, Turkey. You are welcome to our center. Please frequent us as many times as you can. In the meantime, inshallah, we will ask everyone to please allow us and meet with the guests that we have so that we can have some interaction with them as well. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين وبذة خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله وعلى سبط الرحمة إمام الهدى الحسن والحسين سيد شباب أهل الجنة وعلى أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ما آثار البدع والطغيان هادم من الشرك والنفاق حاسدي فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله والسلام عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام اللهم عجل فرجه وسهل مخرجه وخل ناذرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمرائنا المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهل ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهل بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر